Hello and welcome to the Athena 40 podcast, Bouncing Back. I'm Elizabeth Filipouli, founder of Athena 40, an international platform promoting female leadership and connecting individuals from around the world to exchange knowledge and insights. In this podcast, we're interviewing thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and decision makers. We're bringing you insights related to developments triggered by the coronavirus crisis. And we speak with pioneering women from across different industries and countries. My guest today is Leonor Skeput, the CEO of the Montessori Group in the UK. Leonor is an award-winning social entrepreneur with a rich career spanning both NGOs and the private sector. Now, as many of you will know, the Montessori method is an alternative learning and development method pioneered by Maria Montessori in Italy in the early 20th century. The idea is that the child is allowed to learn and develop through its own creativity and curiosity. Our conversation today will focus on schools being closed during the lockdown period and what that means for parents and children, but also for the future of education. Leonor, a pleasure to speak to you today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be asked to join a fantastic list of past speakers.
Thank you. And so you are an Athena 40 supporter, which is fantastic for us because we need pioneering female minds like you.
Thank you.
So traditional classrooms are closed and hundreds of millions of children all over the world are now learning from home. How has the Montessori Group adapted to that new reality?
Well, we have started from the basis that parents are working from home as well, and it's very difficult to try and recreate a classroom at home, particularly if you're a parent that has to work. And therefore, our activities, our advice, our support is geared around giving families the support that they need, suggestions, but also trying to take away a little bit of the guilt around not being able to replicate a classroom at home. So the strongest message that we're sending out to parents is that actually it's fine for your children to learn through play. For young children and older children, they can learn a lot of skills through letting them play within a framework, so giving them activities, but just not having to be constantly watching them, constantly monitoring what they're doing. So we have provided a whole range of online resources for free. Anyone in the world can access them through our Montessori training website. So we have ideas, we have activities, we have short courses, which makes it sound like you have to study, but it's not. It's really more insights for parents around issues that might be of concern for them. And we now have a weekly webinar on Friday that is open to any parent. And in fact, we then put it up on our Montessori training Facebook. So if somebody can't join, they can download it. Looking at, again, different aspects of children's learning and activities. So this Friday, for example, we're going to have 2 child psychologists talking about the importance of role play. And that's really key at this moment where some children may be feeling anxious, they may be feeling distressed, and the way that they will express those feelings is actually through role play, by mimicking through play what they're seeing around. So, for example, we've heard stories of children making corona cakes. So that's their way of dealing with it. So we're going to talk about that at our webinar on Friday.
And are these interactive webinars? Can parents communicate and raise questions?
Absolutely.
And you provide live feedback.
Absolutely.
What is the main question that you come across as, being the main concern, if you like, or an issue of worry?
I think the main concern that parents have is this damaging our children's education? Is this fact that they're going to be away from school going to damage their chances of success, educational success? Our response to that would be twofold. And the first is, every child is going through the same thing. So it's not just your child. So your child is not going to be particularly disadvantaged because every child is off school. And the second is that actually, as we move into this new digital age, the traditional education methods that focus very much on learning particular skills isn't that helpful, because the sorts of skills that we're going to need in the future are the skills, the softer skills, creativity, collaboration, problem solving. You can do that with your child at home. They don't need to go into necessarily to go into a traditional classroom. Having said that, the big issue, of course, is around socialization. That is the big issue for children.
And the human connection, and of course, working together as a team.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And that's and of course you can do some of that through Zoom and teleconferencing, but there's something about that human connection, that ability to sort of almost read what the other person is thinking through their body language, through how they're interacting with the environment around them, that isn't so easy to do on a screen. So I think that's going to be a big issue if we, continue with this restriction. And of course, in some parts of the world, it's a very restrictive lockdown. My family come from Spain, and they really have been in lockdown there. So it's a big concern. It's a big concern. How do we? And in fact, one of the things that we're going to be doing, one of the courses that we're going to be providing soon, is about how do you transition a child that's been at home for months back into the school environment. What are the things that you need to be thinking about as a parent?
Well, for sure, homeschooling is changing our approach towards education as a whole.
Yeah.
Do you think that this reality is actually creating a legacy that will last, that will eventually change our established schooling system?
Well, I hope so, because I think it has the chance to do that. What's really fascinating, I was part of a online conference yesterday. It was a global conference of educationalists looking at digital education. And we had people participating from Somalia, Argentina, Australia, everywhere in the world. I mean, it was about 40 different people. And in every single country, they see digital education as the way forward. They are, investing very heavily in it. And I thought that was quite interesting that they, that even, I mean, for example, we had one lady who was an advisor to the Ministry of Education in Somalia saying, we have, I think she said it was something like about 6 million children without school places, and we think that the way to educate those children is actually through digital education, even though we're a poor country. Those were her words, and I thought that's really interesting that globally this is being discussed and people are really thinking about this at the highest level. So there will be a shift. There will be a shift, definitely.
So when we say digital education, what do we mean exactly? Of course, there are many channels to deliver education, to deliver knowledge. But how would you give us, an overview of what this digital education would include?
Well, as you say, there are very different models of doing it. I mean, the way that so we span both ends, because obviously Montessori is predominantly around early years, but we have a teacher training college, so we teach students who are adults who come and learn how to be teachers. And in our teacher training college, we do what we call blended learning, which is where we have students from across the world. We have students from 94 countries joining the students in the classroom in real time. So, there's a real interactive sort of behavior going on. And I think that's very valuable. Certainly, our students get a lot out of it. So I think there's a good way to do it. Of course, all universities have almost had to go digital at the moment and provide online teaching. And a number of them won't be set up to do it or won't have had the experience to do it. So that's another impact. So on the other end of the scale for university students, it'll be quite interesting what it does for universities, and particularly where, students may not want, or their families may not want them to travel to another country to study right now. I think there are ways of doing it really, really well without losing the human element. And there are ways that are sort of slightly less creative, where you literally, download something and read it, and there's no interaction. I think there's always going to be a need to have that interaction, always.
Well, there is another caveat here that currently we're talking about homeschooling, but we're also talking about parents being at home because they're either furloughed or they, due to lockdown, they have to stay at home. When we're talking about this transition to digital education, what happens with children and where are they be? Where will the classrooms be?
Well, they can still go to school. I mean, but they might just have the ability to interact more globally. So, wouldn't it be wonderful if, children in the UK could be having lessons with children in, I don't know, in Africa, in a country in Africa, around sustainability, and what does it mean to that sort of shared learning? That could be quite a rich experience.
That will be fantastic. Yes, of course, because it will give them this global understanding of the world, and also the opportunity to interact with children from different cultures and different parts of the world, and especially now that we are experiencing this global threat, this idea of being interconnected is even more prevalent, and I'm sure it triggers the curiosity of children. What is happening in China? What's wrong, in Spain or in Italy? So this idea of a person, an individual, being a global citizen is much more dominant.
Absolutely, and this is where technology, and this is where I see the positive side of it. This is where if we're creative, as human beings are creative, but if we can think creatively about education and what is it that we want children to learn, if we want children to learn how to be global citizens and understand that they are part of an interconnected world, how do we use technology to achieve that, and how do we use it for communication with people of different cultures? How do we use it for learning languages? I'm sure it's a lot more fun learning a language, speaking to someone who speaks that language, than listening to a tape or doing it on the screen or something. Or just so much better, and you learn more. You learn more because language changes, and you also see the body language, and you feel confident if you say something and someone understands you in a different language. So I think there's lots of opportunities if we are creative enough to take them for digital education to have a real impact. But I agree. I don't think I wouldn't say that it's the end of schools, because it shouldn't. We have very highly qualified teachers whose role isn't just to impart information. It's certainly in Montessori, it's to guide and support the child's development, and to sort of ensure that the child has the ability to work with others and can learn the sort of skills that sometimes are role modeled. Children learn by seeing other people behave, and seeing groups behave. And I think that those interactions, we shouldn't lose those interactions, but I think we can be a lot more creative in the future.
So how is the Montessori Group preparing for whenever the lockdown is over, whenever life returns to a new normalcy?
Well, we want to sort of talk to more people. So we're really having a lot of thought at the moment about how do we get this message out there? How do we talk to families, teachers, and that's part of the work that we're doing at the moment, is in preparation for that. So, for example, we now have, as I said, we actually have webinars 3 times a week. So before we had webinars every couple of weeks, and we now have them 3 times a week, 2 for teachers, 1 for parents. We're doing our sort of Montessori Network. We've just written to 300,000 parents in the UK. The idea being that if we can get those people understanding and buying into this idea that actually we could do things differently, and I think people are open at the moment to doing things differently. I think this has given everybody a bit of a reset button to think about the world differently. Well, if we can encourage them and we can say, look, let's start having this conversation. Let's start talking to the decision makers, the policy makers, saying we want to change, and there are ways that we can change without needing to do, it's evolution, it's not revolution. Evolution is always a lot easier, because we're not saying let's take away everything that doesn't exist and start again. We're saying, actually, can we evolve things? Interestingly enough, we think that quite a lot of teachers, certainly in the UK, actually pretty much do Montessori. They may not know it, but they do it, and so do a lot of parents. So it's not, and we're not. For us, it's about the child and about the future. So, whether someone calls it Montessori or doesn't call it Montessori, we're less fussed, because it's about the philosophy. It's about the, how do we shift this mindset that we have, this mindset of this is what education should be, that actually came from the Industrial Revolution, and move it into a different space. The fact that virtually every Silicon Valley entrepreneur is an ex-Montessorian shows the power of creative thinking and how it can translate to worldly success.
You are a staunch proponent of women's advancement, Leonor.
Yes.
And inevitably, women are more impacted because, among other things, our unpaid work has multiplied these days. What can we do there?
Actually, it's even worse than that, and this is the sort of the negative side, and particularly in the UK. So the biggest issue that nurseries are going to face, and not just Montessori nurseries, but nurseries in the UK are going to face, is that a number of them were already struggling financially before this. This may see them close. And that actually has an impact on women, because if women can't get quality childcare, how are they going to be able to go back to work? How are they going to be able to, have a career if they have to be constantly worrying about childcare? We recently wrote an open letter to the Chancellor saying, this is actually doesn't make economic sense to allow nurseries to close, because how are we going to encourage economic growth in the future if suddenly a vast number of the workforce are going to have to make some and invariably it's going to be the woman, are going to have to make some very difficult choices about, do I go back to work full time, or do I go back to work at all? If I haven't got a nursery or childcare available to me. And actually, this is seriously going to impact women who perhaps are in lower paid jobs, where taking their children to nursery isn't a luxury. It's not to give them more free time. It's about, I need to go out and work and earn money to pay the bills. So it's actually quite a serious issue, and we're very concerned that because early years sector is mostly women, nurseries are mostly owned and managed by women, that voice isn't being heard. You don't hear other sectors sort of not having such a loud voice, but early years doesn't seem to have a voice, because, and I do wonder if it's because it's mostly women running their own businesses, and it's obviously going to have an impact on women. I'm actually quite worried about this. I'm really worried, both as an employer but also as a woman. What are we going to have to go back to the 50s when women stay at home because if they have children? I mean, who wants to go back to that?
If there was ever a time for the private sector to show accountability, demonstrate accountability, this is now. And I think that the private sector has a huge responsibility to support people, support individuals. So a campaign from your side and other people who are in that space of supporting women, platforms like Athena 40,
Absolutely.
this has to become a pressure and make sure that exactly what you just described, a grim situation for women in the UK, but also internationally, that will prevent them from staying a part of, the economy, or even prevent them from thriving in the future. This cannot continue. We have to change this now.
Absolutely. Well, childcare is a feminist issue. It's very simple. I mean, I'm sure that, Elizabeth, you found this the same when you've spoken to women who have children. That's probably been the biggest issue they've had to, consider as part of their career trajectory. What do I do about childcare? Unless we resolve this, we are always going to have this issue of incredible female talent disappearing from our workforce because they're not being supported when they have children.
On a personal level, Leonor, what is it that you have missed the most during this lockdown period?
What have I missed? I've actually missed the ability, that kind of human connection. I mean, I do spend virtually all of my day on teleconferences, obviously, because we're all remote working. I'm very fortunate. I can go and walk my dogs in the mornings, early in the mornings. I live near a big green space and I can go and do that. But I do miss that ability to just sit down and, have a cup of coffee with someone, or, have a drink or a meal and just, chat and enjoy and just be in an environment where there are other people around. That I have missed that. I think that's the Mediterranean in me.
It's something which, as you can imagine, I'm missing big time. And so we had a series of events, as you know, as part of the Athena 40 initiatives, which meant that we had opportunities to be together, co-create, brainstorm, meet other women and men, of course, who are interested in supporting women's advancement. But I'm sure that these opportunities are going to be created again, and they're going to be even more timely and even more impactful, because currently all of us are part of this momentum in the history of humanity to restart our thinking, restart our societies, restart our world. So I see this as a tremendous opportunity for all of us to make sure that the legacy we are building for this world is going to be a lasting one, and a legacy of positive social change.
Absolutely. And I think, Elizabeth, what you touched on and the role of Athena 40 is so essential. This is a global problem. Let's not kid ourselves. This is a global problem, and we need to be talking globally to be able to resolve it. It's bigger than any one nation. And, we don't know if we're going to suffer it again. And, absolutely the work that you're doing with Athena 40 is essential, because we need people coming together to discuss purposefully what we're going to do about it. Not just talk, but actually discuss with purpose, which I think is what Athena 40 does. So absolutely, we need you and your work to continue.
Well, thank you for all your support. We're already planning and preparing for March 2021, which is going to be the third Athena 40 Global Conversation. And we're looking, of course, to expand the mandate, the message, and the engagement of women across many countries. So there are things to do, and a journey which we have decided to take together. And I'm sure that, our partnership, our collaboration is going to be even more inspiring and motivating.
I think so too, and I'm delighted to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Leonor, for this conversation today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Leonor Stjepic, CEO of the Montessori Group. Thank you for listening to the Athena 40 podcast, Bouncing Back. Stay tuned. More episodes coming up. Please feel free to subscribe. Athena 40 is hosting conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, influencers, and decision makers from all over the world in this effort to find our new normal. You can find more information on us on athena40forum.com. Follow us on Twitter on Athena_40. Stay safe, stay inspired.